I'm a 28-year-old man, and as far back as I can remember, I've been the one cooking for my family. Not because I enjoyed it, but because they expected it. I learned to cook from my grandmother, who recently passed away. She was someone who could take basic ingredients and turn them into something extraordinary, and I learned as much as I could from her. Among everyone in the family, I was the only one genuinely interested in learning her recipes. Growing up, I spent most of my time in the kitchen with her, while my cousins and siblings were out playing. At first, I thought it was something special between just the two of us, but after she passed, I realized it wasn't about that. It was about everyone wanting to eat her food without doing any of the work themselves. Since I was the only one who knew how to make it right, I became the new family chef. It started with small things. Thanksgiving dinner here, a birthday party there. But before long, I was cooking for all the major family events. Weddings, reunions, Christmas, even casual Sunday gatherings. My parents, aunts, uncles, everyone just assumed I'd be the one cooking. And not once did anyone offer to help. They'd show up, eat, and act like I had nothing else to do. I always wanted to attend culinary school, but my family laughed it off. They said it wasn't a real career and that cooking was just a hobby. So instead, I became an accountant because it seemed more stable. Even after I started working full-time, nothing changed. They still expected me to cook for every family event, even though I barely had any time for myself. The worst part was that I never even got to enjoy the meals I made. By the time I was done cooking, everyone had already eaten, and I was left with whatever leftovers were on the table. No one in the family ever lifted a finger, none of my siblings, none of my cousins. If I asked for help, I'd get excuses like, too tired, or too busy, or don't know how to cook. Meanwhile, I was expected to drop everything and prepare meals for 30 or more people on short notice, and they didn't see anything wrong with it. Then came my cousin's wedding. She contacted me months in advance, asking if I could cook for the reception. Not help with everything, just cook for 100 guests. No pay, no compensation, simply because I was the only one who could make Grandma's recipes taste the way she did. I immediately refused. There was no way I was going to spend weeks planning, prepping, and cooking for a wedding for free. That's when the guilt trip started. My mom called, saying it would mean so much to the family if I agreed. My aunts added that it was my duty to keep Grandma's recipes alive. Even my cousin acted like I was being selfish, saying I was ruining her big day by refusing. It was insane, like I owed them my time and effort just because I knew how to cook. Eventually, I agreed to a compromise. I'd cook only for the rehearsal dinner, but not the wedding itself. They weren't happy, but they accepted it. Or so I thought. The wedding came, and I was excited to finally attend an event as a guest. No cooking, no sweating in the kitchen, no running around to make sure everything was perfect. I could finally sit down, enjoy a meal, and celebrate. But I wasn't invited. The day before, my cousin's mom casually mentioned that there weren't enough seats at the reception, so they had to cut a few people from the guest list. I wasn't on it. The person who had cooked for every family event for years somehow wasn't good enough to be invited. I was furious, but my mom told me to let it go. "It's not a big deal," she said. "Just be happy for your cousin, and don't make it about you." Then came the real slap in the face. A week after the wedding, my younger cousin accidentally let something slip. He was going through photos on his phone and showed me a picture of the reception dinner. The beautifully plated dishes, the spreads, the centerpieces. I recognized every single dish. It was my food. Everything I had cooked for the rehearsal dinner had been repackaged and served at the wedding reception. They had used me, stolen my food, and then uninvited me from the event where it was served. I was in shock. When I confronted my cousin, she brushed it off. "Well, you weren't using it," she said. "The guests loved it. You should be proud. Like I should be grateful that my food was enjoyed by people I wasn't even allowed to sit with." I turned to my parents for support, but they didn't see the problem. "It's just food," my mom said. At least they appreciated it. I couldn't believe it. Years of cooking, years of being taken for granted, and now I was being treated like an unpaid caterer who didn't even deserve a seat at the table. That was it for me. I took my story to Reddit to see if I was overreacting. Thousands of people responded. Strangers, complete strangers, had more respect for me than my own family did. They told me what I already knew but didn't want to admit. I was being used. And that's when I decided, never again. After finding out my cousin had used my food at her wedding and uninvited me from the reception, I wasn't about to let it slide. I dropped a simple message in the family group chat. Hey, just curious, why was I uninvited from the wedding dinner when you were serving my food? It took a few minutes for the first response to come in. My cousin. She said the venue had a strict seating limit and they couldn't fit everyone. At the time, I believed her. I was annoyed, but I figured it was just bad luck. Later, I found out the venue actually had a 200-person capacity, and the wedding had barely 80 guests. Then she added, "We really appreciated the food, though. Everyone loved it." Like that was supposed to make it better. I wasn't buying it. A few minutes later, I got a private message from one of my aunts. She wasn't one to get involved in drama, so I was surprised when she told me that the seating limit excuse was a lie. The venue had plenty of space. There were empty seats. My cousin Lisa, one of the few who actually talks to me, chimed in saying she had been confused when she saw the food because she knew I had cooked it, but no one saw me there. People at the wedding even asked where I was. My cousin's answer. She told them I was too busy to attend. The real kicker. Wedding pictures started popping up on Facebook, and people were tagging my cousin in posts, raving about the food, as if she had spent weeks preparing it. One caption even said, "Bride and groom put so much love into every detail, including this amazing meal." I almost commented, "Glad you enjoyed the food I wasn't allowed to eat." But I held back. My younger brother didn't hold back, though. He saw everything happening in the group chat and lost it. He called my cousin out, saying she had used me, lied to my face, and then had the nerve to take credit for my work. He also pointed out that she had never even asked me if she could use the food I cooked for the rehearsal dinner at the wedding. My cousin's response, she doubled down. According to her, I was making a big deal out of nothing. I should be grateful that my cooking was appreciated, and that she made sure Grandma's recipes were part of her special day. My mom stepped in, but instead of backing me up, she told me to let it go. "It's just one dinner," she said. "Family is more important than pride." That was the last straw. I blocked my cousin on everything. No more messages, no more calls, nothing. Then something interesting happened. Another family event was coming up, a big reunion we did every summer. I had always been the one cooking for it. Except this time, I wasn't going. Panic set in immediately. My mom tried to talk me into making just one dish so there would be something good on the table. My aunt suddenly became extra nice, hinting that they hoped I wouldn't hold a grudge. Even my cousin, the same one who had uninvited me from her wedding, had the nerve to send a message through another relative asking if I could at least bring a side dish. I ignored them all. Then came the passive-aggressive Facebook post. One of my aunts, not even the cousin, got someone else to do her dirty work and posted something vague about certain people who hold grudges and think they're better than family. A few of my cousins liked the post. That's when I decided to tell my side of the story. I didn't name names. I didn't even say it was about my family. I just made a post explaining the situation. I'd cooked for every family event for years. I was uninvited from the wedding dinner where my food was served. My cousin took credit for my cooking. When I confronted her, I was told to let it go. The post blew up. People in my extended family started asking questions. Some relatives who didn't know the full story before reached out to tell me they were on my side. Even people outside the family, old friends, co-workers, were shocked. Meanwhile, my cousin's little friend group started falling apart. Turns out many of them didn't know what she had done to me. Some started distancing themselves. A couple even reached out to apologize on her behalf. The family was officially divided. Some relatives were firmly on my side, saying what my cousin did was wrong. Others called me petty, saying it was just food, and I was being dramatic. But here's the thing. None of them were mad about me calling my cousin out. They were mad because they realized they weren't going to get free food anymore. After my last post, things got worse. I started getting messages from old friends, people I hadn't talked to in years, asking about the situation. Apparently, my cousin had been telling a very different version of events. According to her, I was never uninvited. She claimed I had refused to attend because I was too tired from cooking the rehearsal dinner. She also told people that she had personally made most of the food and I had only helped a little. One of my old friends, still connected with some of my cousin's wedding circle, sent me screenshots. My cousin was playing the victim. She said I was trying to ruin her wedding memories and turn the family against her over a meal. Then my mom called. She told me to delete my post. Apparently, my cousin had gone to her, crying about how she was being harassed because of me. My mom said the post was causing too much drama and that it was embarrassing for the family. I refused. I wasn't going to protect people who lied about me and used me for free labor. If my cousin didn't want people knowing what she did, she shouldn't have done it. Then the seating limit excuse completely fell apart. Another cousin, one of the few who had been honest with me, sent me more screenshots from the wedding venue's website. The seating limit had never been an issue. The venue had space for 200 people. My cousin's wedding had barely 80 guests. She lied. I was never uninvited because of space. They just didn't want me there, but they still wanted to use my food. And then, something unexpected happened. I received a message from my cousin's husband, whom I didn't know well, but who had always been polite. The message was straightforward. He said, "I just learned what happened, and I'm really sorry. I was told you were too busy to come, and I didn't know you were actually uninvited. That wasn't right." He apologized for her behavior. Meanwhile, my cousin went off on me, sending a long, angry text accusing me of ruining her honeymoon. Apparently, people in her circle had started questioning why I wasn't at the wedding. Instead of admitting to it, she blamed me for making it a big issue. I ignored her message because I was done with her. The next family event came around, and I heard through the grapevine that everyone was expecting me to cook again, even after all that had happened. My aunts were already planning the meal around me cooking everything, so I set a new rule. If you want me to cook, you need to pay me up front. The family was in shock, acting as though it was unbelievable that I would charge them. One of my aunts even called to say, "But you've always cooked for free. That's just what family does." Except it wasn't true. I had cooked for free, but they simply ate. Then the smear campaign began. My cousin started telling people that I had become money hungry, trying to profit from family, acting like a celebrity chef. But this time, it backfired. Some relatives spoke up, saying what everyone had known but never said. They had been using me for free labor. One uncle even admitted that he had assumed I was paid for the wedding food. When he found out I wasn't, he was angry. Then something else happened. Some relatives, the ones who actually respected me, sent me money. It wasn't much, but they paid me as a thank you for all the times I had cooked in the past. They had assumed I was okay with it, but now that they knew the truth, they didn't want to be part of it. Then my mom got involved again. She tried to guilt-trip me, asking, "Can't you just make something small?" She said it was tradition. I told her that tradition was over. At first, she kept pushing, but eventually, she realized I wasn't going to budge. I began to think that maybe I should have gone to culinary school after all. Strangers on Reddit, old friends, and even a few family members were complimenting my cooking. A few people even asked if I took orders. I started small, making meals for coworkers and catering small events. Soon, I had regular customers, and word got around. People saw my value. So I made a bold move. I told my family that the next meal I cooked would be at a restaurant, and they would have to pay for it. There was silence for weeks before my family tried to act like nothing had happened. I received an unexpected invitation from my mom in a group chat for the upcoming family potluck. At first, I wasn't even asked to bring anything, just told to come and hang out. I immediately sensed something was up. My mom started with the "everyone misses you" line, talking about moving past the drama. I agreed to come on one condition. I wasn't bringing any food. The chat went quiet. Then my cousin, the one who took my food for her wedding, messaged me saying, "It'll be weird without your cooking." I simply replied, "Guess you'll have to figure something out." On the day of the potluck, I walked in and immediately noticed the problem. The food was a disaster. Everything was store-bought, undercooked, or just sad. There were dried-out rotisserie chickens, glue-like mac and cheese, and a few barely warmed frozen meals in disposable trays. I could tell what had happened. They thought I'd cave and bring food anyway. My cousin and aunt were whispering frantically in the kitchen. I overheard my aunt say, "Well, now what are we supposed to do?" Less than 5 minutes later, my aunt raised her voice so everyone could hear. "It's just so sad that some people don't want to contribute anymore." She shot me a look. I grabbed a plate and started filling it with their disaster of a meal. A cousin approached me quietly asking, "Hey, could you help us fix this real quick?" I smiled and said, "Nope, I'm just here to enjoy the food." Then came the taste test. The first bite of chicken was dry, and the mac and cheese had the texture of wet cardboard. The gravy was from a jar, barely heated. People began to complain. "Who made the mac and cheese?" "This stuffing is weird. Did anyone season this chicken?" Within minutes, fingers were pointing. One aunt accused another cousin of ruining the mashed potatoes. Someone else blamed my cousin's mom for the gravy disaster. The food situation was spiraling fast into chaos. My cousin, the one who had used my food for her wedding, tried to shift the focus. She turned to me with a forced smile, saying, "Well, if you think it's bad, why don't you fix it?" I took a slow sip of my drink and said, "Nah, I'm good." One of my uncles burst out laughing, saying, "Honestly, this is what you get for taking OP for granted." A few other relatives nodded in agreement. My cousin turned bright red. The best part was that she tried to copy one of my recipes and failed. She had followed my old social media posts and recipes. But without the proper techniques, it turned out awful, bland, dry, and missing key details that can't be copied from pictures. People started pushing their plates away, some leaving early, and others ordering takeout. As I was about to leave, my aunt tried one last guilt trip. She said, "We're family. This isn't how family treats each other." I turned around and said, "You mean like how family used me and then uninvited me from the wedding?" There was silence. I grabbed my jacket, waved at the relatives who actually respected me, and walked out. By the next day, the group chat was in turmoil. Some relatives were calling out my cousin for how she treated me, while others still blamed me for making things worse. The best part was that some younger cousins privately messaged me, wanting to learn how to cook. I agreed, but only if they were serious and not just looking for another free chef. I posted an update online, and it went viral. The top comment said, "The best revenge is watching them fail without you." It turns out that my cousin's wedding food disaster didn't just ruin our relationship, it completely torched her reputation. Word got back to me that she tried to host a dinner for her in-laws and wanted to impress them by recreating the wedding menu using my recipes. It was a disaster. The chicken was dry and flavorless, the mashed potatoes were lumpy, and the dessert was a mess. Her in-laws were polite at first, but someone eventually commented, "This isn't anything like the food from the wedding." That's when the truth came out. A family friend, one of the few who could keep a secret, accidentally let it slip that I had made the wedding food. My cousin was humiliated in front of her husband's family. A few days later, I received a long text from my cousin, apologizing for how things got out of hand, but never mentioning the wedding or stealing my food. I left it on read. Then came the real kicker. I got a message from an aunt who had been part of the wedding guilt trip. She asked, "How much would you charge to cater our next event?" Now they wanted to pay. I sent back a price, $150 per person, with a non-refundable deposit. Hours passed with no response. Then my mom called, asking, "Why are you being so mean about this?" I replied, "Why should I help people who don't respect me?" She had no response. That's when my cousin fully lost it. She went on Facebook and made a huge post about how some people hold grudges forever and act like they're food celebrities now. My younger brother saw it and commented, "You should have invited him to the wedding dinner." She deleted the post immediately. Meanwhile, my side hustle was taking off. My cooking business was thriving. Friends, coworkers, and even distant relatives started placing orders. One by one, family members began testing the waters, suddenly acting nice and saying things like, "We miss your cooking," or "Wouldn't it be nice to have a big meal together?" I ignored all of them, unless they actually offered to pay. A few weeks later, my mom sat me down and said, "I didn't realize how much they relied on you." I just nodded. She finally understood, but things weren't going back to how they were. One day, she reached out with a goodwill gesture, asking if we could grab a drink and talk. I laughed and said, "You can pay my catering invoice instead." She blocked me. The best part? I'm happier than ever. No more stress. No more being taken for granted. I cook because I love it, not because I'm forced to. The internet went wild when I posted this update. The top comment said, "The best revenge is living well, and you're living well." The next time they want my cooking, they'll have to make a reservation. Things had been quiet for a while. Too quiet. Then, out of nowhere, my cousin messaged me a long, overly sweet apology, saying she wanted to move past everything and appreciated me so much. She didn't mention the wedding or stealing my food. I left it on read. A few days later, a mutual friend filled me in. My cousin was pregnant, and guess what? She wanted me to cater her baby shower. Not only that, but she had already told people I'd do it without even asking me. A week later, she invited me for coffee, acting extra nice as if nothing had happened. After pretending to catch up for 10 minutes, she said, "For my baby shower, I'd love for you to make the food. I want it to be special, like my wedding." I smiled and replied, "That'll be $2,000 up front." Her face fell. Cue the guilt trip. She tried everything, even saying, "This is for my baby. You're really going to charge your own family?" I just shrugged and said, "You charged me to be invited to your wedding dinner." She went silent. Within an hour, she was on Facebook, posting a long, dramatic message about how people only care about money now and trying to paint me as greedy for refusing to do something nice for family. My younger brother commented, "You mean like when you let OP cook your wedding dinner and didn't invite them?" She deleted the post immediately. Word spread about my food, and people started booking me left and right. Then a coworker's friend recommended me to a restaurant owner who was looking for a chef. The ultimate power move happened at the next family potluck. I brought my own food, just for me, and enjoyed a perfectly cooked meal while they struggled with dry turkey and flavorless mashed potatoes. My cousin didn't even make eye contact. A few days later, my aunt called my mom and told her I was being too harsh. For the first time, my mom defended me, saying, "They did enough for you guys. You can cook your own food." I was shocked. One afternoon, she showed up at my work unannounced, trying to act like everything was fine. I cut her off and asked, "Are you here to book my catering services?" She hesitated, then said, "No." I replied, "Then I'm busy." She left in tears. No sympathy. A month later, I heard how things went at her BBQ. She tried making the food herself with store-bought trays and random recipes from the internet. It was a total disaster, and the guests were clearly disappointed. Her husband even messaged me privately saying, "I wish you had done the food. She really messed up." I simply replied with a thumbs up emoji. People started telling her to just pay me, but she snapped, blocked me, and stopped coming to family events. Honestly, no one really cared. Then the restaurant hired me. I was finally doing what I loved, on my own terms. One day at work, guess who walked in as a customer? My cousin. She tried acting like nothing had happened, but I personally served her meal and made sure she paid full price. Things had never been better. My restaurant job was amazing. The head chef started featuring my dishes, and they were getting lots of attention online. Customers were talking, food bloggers were posting, and catering requests kept coming in. It didn't take long before I was fully booked. Meanwhile, my family had started respecting my boundaries. No more calls asking me to cook, no more guilt trips. Some of them even started paying for the food without complaining. It felt like a miracle. But of course, not everyone was happy. Word was, my cousin was furious. She hated seeing my success, still wouldn't apologize, and kept acting like I was the one who'd wronged her. Then she made her final mistake. She threw a family BBQ, didn't ask me to help, and didn't even mention me. This was her chance to prove she didn't need me. It went horribly. She burned half the food and left the rest undercooked. People even started ordering takeout. Apparently, her husband had enough. He finally called her out and said, "You should have just paid OP." Word spread quickly, and their marriage started getting tense, all because she wouldn't admit she was wrong. Then, the biggest moment of my career happened. The restaurant offered me a full-time chef position. I quit my day job and started making more money than ever, doing what I loved. One afternoon, my mom visited me at work. After the potluck disaster, she'd started seeing things differently. She didn't say much at first, but I noticed small changes. She stopped pressuring me to cook and even told my aunt I deserved respect. One day, she came to visit me at work, sat down, ate my food, and after a long pause, she said, "I should have supported you doing this sooner." I didn't say anything, just nodded. I forgave her, but I'd never forget. Months passed, and then, out of nowhere, she sent me a message. No apology, just a long rambling text about how lucky I was, that things worked out. I didn't respond. She stopped showing up to family events, and no one took her side anymore. Honestly, I didn't miss her one bit. I posted my final update online, and it exploded. The top comment was, "Living well is the best revenge, and you're living well." No more toxic expectations, no more cooking for ungrateful people, just success, happiness, and respect. Apparently, my cousin was trying to be an influencer, but it wasn't going well. I started doing online cooking classes, and people from Reddit even signed up to learn from me. One night, I took myself out to a fancy dinner and smiled at the menu, because now people actually pay me for food. The next time my cousin wants my cooking, she'll have to order it, just like everyone else. I thought I was finally done with her. But then, a mutual friend sent me a link. My cousin had started a food Instagram. Her bio read, "Self-taught home chef, passionate about cooking and sharing my journey." The irony nearly knocked me out. At first, I ignored it, but then I saw the photos she was posting. My dishes, the same meals I had made at family gatherings, the same recipes she had stolen, even the plating was identical. Then, she really messed up. One of the pictures was a screenshot from my old posts. She didn't even crop out my watermark. I could have called her out immediately, but I wanted to see how deep she'd dig herself. So, I sent her a DM saying, "Love this recipe. Where did you learn it?" No response. A few of my friends started commenting on her posts. "Wow, this looks just like OP's cooking." She started blocking them one by one. After enough people pointed it out, she panicked, deleted everything, and then posted a long rant about how some people don't support family and how haters don't want to see others succeed. No one bought it. I thought my mom had finally learned, but then she asked me to be the bigger person. She said, "She's just trying to do something for herself. Can't you just ignore it?" Unbelievable. That was it. I was done. There was no fixing this. No more second chances. She was no longer family to me. Turns out she's terrible at cooking. The few people who followed her realized she had no real skills, and she quietly deleted the account. No more checking up on her, no more caring. She was officially out of my life. I posted my final update, and the internet celebrated. The top comment was, "Imagine trying to steal the recipes of the person you screwed over." The restaurant promoted me, and I started doing pop-up events. Life was good. One day, I got a catering request from one of my cousin's former Instagram followers. The universe had spoken. Out of nowhere, her husband reached out. He said, "She knows she messed up. She just doesn't know how to admit it." I just laughed and didn't reply. She spent so much time trying to use me that she forgot to build something of her own. My catering business thrived, and every week I got more bookings. The restaurant I worked at started featuring my signature dishes, and I was even getting private event requests. For the first time in years, cooking felt fun again. No pressure, no family expecting free labor, just pure joy. No more messages asking me to cook just one dish. No more last-minute guilt trips. Now they either support my business or leave me alone, just the way it should be. Meanwhile, my cousin was struggling. Word got around that she was in financial trouble after spending too much on her wedding and influencer attempts, fancy backdrops, paid promotions, high-end kitchen gadgets. But none of it paid off. Then, desperate for a new source of income, she jumped into an MLM, and it failed immediately. Shocking, really. One day, I got a long email from her. It was classic cousin behavior. No apology, just a rambling message about how things got out of hand and how she missed having family around. She was fishing for a reconnection. I deleted it and didn't respond. Then something incredible happened. I got featured in a local magazine. They wrote about my journey, my food, and my business. My name was in print, everything I ever wanted. A few days later, my dad pulled me aside, looked at the magazine, and said, "I was wrong not to support you earlier." It took him years to admit it, and it meant everything to me. I found out my cousin had seen the magazine feature. She didn't say a word, no Facebook rant, no fake message. She had finally given up. For the first time in forever, I took a real vacation. No family obligations, no cooking for freeloaders, just me, relaxing and enjoying life. A local investor who had attended one of my events reached out. He had tasted my food and was impressed. He wanted to talk business about helping me open a small restaurant where I could showcase my talent. A full circle moment, from being told cooking wasn't a real career to owning my own place. A family friend pulled me aside and told me my cousin wanted to talk. I laughed. I have nothing to say. And that was the end of it. Success, happiness, respect, no toxic people. I had finally won. I posted a final message on Reddit. If your family only values you for what you can do for them, they don't deserve you. Thousands of people upvoted it. The internet wanted more. I kept getting messages asking when my cookbook would come out, and honestly, I might actually do it. No one really knows, but she faded into the background, completely irrelevant. The best thing I ever cooked up was a life without her in it.